Step on up, sit down, twist off that bottle top or crack open that can, and welcome to Porch Matters. This is Terry Cagle coming to you from my back porch. Yes sir, yes ma'am, the name of this show is authentic. On Porch Matters, our saying is this: big issues or just a friendly conversation, no topic is off limits. We take pride in being able to talk about anything with each other in an open discussion. Open discussion is one of the only ways to learn. Your perspective could be changed. You could change the perspective of others. Friends and family, welcome to another episode of Porch Matters. I'm glad you're here. It is, as I record, 12:08 a.m. on Monday morning, so happy Monday morning to you whenever you're hearing this live. I've got dogs barking all around me. If you hear them, I apologize. It's also raining. I've tried to wait out the dogs from barking, but the longer that I wait, the more it rains. So I'm sorry if any of that's coming through on the audio, but that's one of the downfalls of recording on your back porch. I hope everybody's had a great couple of weeks. Definitely been interesting. I would really love to give a shout out to the Walker County Sheriff's Department and any other affiliates that may have helped them out. We had a incident 2 or 3 days ago now where someone was shot. Sheriff's Department did their job and did their job well. Kudos to them. That's about all I'll say, because I don't really know any of the details of the case other than what was posted on Facebook and on other social media. But there was a small manhunt, and at least one of the suspects was caught. Good job, guys, if any of you are listening. Bravo. I know with things going on social media lately, especially with that woman up in Tennessee, police officers are kind of a laughing stock, at least for a couple of weeks anyway, until people forget about it. Because let's face facts, some people have very short attention spans, and if it's not on social media, people forget about it. So, just want to give a shout out and give credit where credit's due. Bravo. Moving right along. If this is your first time listening to this show, thank you very much for tuning in. There's a lot of podcasts out there, but you're deciding to tune into this one. I'm very much appreciated, and I hope you enjoy the show. I got a really good conversation coming up here in just a few minutes, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But before we get there, the Porch Matters Would You Rather question this week. Bringing the questions back this week, folks. I really hope you enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your answers on social media. The way we do it, if this is your first time listening, you can hear the question, you can hear my answer. The question will be posted on social media. It'll be posted at either the Facebook page, Facebook group, Instagram, or Twitter. Please comment your answer below, and then the next episode, I'll read the answers from this episode's question. Would you rather this episode is, would you rather be a homemaker or be the breadwinner? Again, comment your answers on social media, and I will be more than happy to read them. I would rather be the breadwinner. I don't think I could handle being cooped up at the house all day with, everything going on. And quite frankly, I salute anybody, whether you be man or woman. It's 2023. Women don't always stay at home like they used to anymore. Sometimes guys do. So I applaud you if you stay at home and make the house nice and warm for the breadwinner. If that is you, bravo. What say you? Really looking forward to hearing your answers. The Porch Matters food review this episode is Old Town Grille and Creamery in Sheffield, Alabama. Now, a little bit of a backstory. Since I've been doing these reviews, I have spoke to several in my circle and asked for names of places that would be good to do reviews on. And I mentioned it to Stacy, and we've been trying to keep a list between the two of us on places that we think would be good to go try out and review. We had to go up to Russellville. Xander was selected for honor band. Congratulations, Xander. I'm very proud of you. And we went up to Russellville to hear his honor band concert. Very good concert. All the kids did really well. And we were trying to think of something to do and something to go eat while we were up there. And we looked on our list. Lo and behold, Old Town Grille and Creamery was on our list. So we drove up to Sheffield. We went and parked and walked in, and they still had a lot of their Christmas lights and Christmas decorations dangling. It really looked like a nice little party scene. And sat down. They had picnic tables for tables and chairs. They had a checkers board on each one. They had a tic-tac-toe board on each one. Sat down and ordered. I ordered a Philly cheesesteak and fries. Stacy ordered a hamburger salad. She got to build her own salad off of their salad bar. They are one of the few places left around here that actually has a salad bar that you can go and build your own salad. That's big points for me, because if I go to a place and they usually have a salad bar like that, I want a salad like that. I would prefer to build my own at a salad bar instead of having it brought to me. Anyway, she went and built her salad, and they brought her the meat and cheese from the cheeseburger and everything to put on it. That was the way she asked to do it. The food was really good. Really enjoyed the food, but the thing that was the most outstanding was the dessert. I will be posting pictures on social media. Stacy ordered a banana split, and I ordered an Oreo extravaganza. My Oreo extravaganza had what tasted to me like homemade Oreo cookies and cream ice cream, whipped cream, and about 3 or 4 Oreos on top, inside of a mason jar with whipped cream and everything. The thing was huge. It was so big that I honestly couldn't finish it. I had to give part of it to Xander, who said that he was full and didn't want any dessert, but he sure did take care of the rest of my dessert. It was fantastic. The ice cream was so stinking cold, it was numbing. Brain freeze times 10. But my God, it was really good. If you're ever around the Sheffield area and looking for a place to eat, the staff couldn't have been nicer. Ended up striking up a conversation with a man that I think he's co-owner. If you are, sir, and you're listening to this, I'm sorry for that. We never really talked about that, but he happened to be a former pastor in Jasper, so it's a small world. And we just kind of struck up a conversation and talked for about, 10, 15 minutes over the course of the evening. So if you're ever up in that area, please stop by, say hey, get you a sandwich, and definitely enjoy the dessert. Old Town Grille and Creamery, #Fatboy approved. I will be going back, and I will be taking my mother up there definitely to let her try some of the ice cream, and I'm really hoping she don't go into a diabetic coma after she eats it, because there's going to be a lot of it. On this episode, a very short intro. I know I'm trying to fight the rain, but I'm really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. This conversation is about 2 or 3 months in the baking. As I have shared with you on previous episodes, whenever I'd have guests to line up, but then something would happen and fall through, this would be one of those guests. And we talk about it right there at the beginning. I think it was a God thing because we've been trying for 2 or 3 months to get this thing lined up and to be able to have our conversation, but something would happen. So on this episode, Trey Morgan of Stronger Marriages with Trey and Lea comes on the show, and we have a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you do too. Without further ado, let's get started. Trey Morgan, welcome to the porch, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, Terry. I'm glad to be here. Honored to be on the back porch and hanging out with you today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. We've been trying to get this thing worked out for a couple of months, but according to our conversation just a few minutes ago, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but apparently this is a God thing, and we didn't even know it.
Yeah, kind of crazy when you get to visiting and you find out kind of some info that we just found out. I'm anxious to let everybody else know about it, but it's you find out it's a much smaller world than you think it is, and God can do pretty crazy stuff.
Yes, he can. How's life in Texas these days?
Life in Texas is good. It's a beautiful 70-degree day today. Wind's blown a couple of days here. We live in an area where there's kind of 4 seasons, but we hadn't had a lot of winter, which makes us happy. And so Texas is good, and we could use some rain. That for us, we're in agriculture. We live in an area that's got a lot of agriculture. And so we're hurting for some rain right now. And we've been asking God to bless us with a little rain, and hopefully that'll happen soon.
Well, if we could pack it up here in Alabama and carry it to you, I guarantee you we would. We're right in the middle of our wet season. The lakes are a little bit dry or a little bit down because the power companies have been opening them up and running them, but lately it has been like monsoon weather.
Yeah. Well, we're a little jealous. I'd love to have a day where I ran my windshield wipers, but we hadn't got there yet.
Well, 2 or 3 days ago, I'd say it was Thursday, I think, but I was sitting at work. I actually work in a little town in Alabama called Coleman, and I was doing my thing, and apparently I seen some of that rain that Forrest Gump was talking about, some of that sideways rain.
Right.
There was a few tornadoes that ended up coming around, and I didn't even know about it until about 10 minutes after everything passed. Little lady sent me a message saying, "You got a tornado headed your way." I said, so that's what all of that was going on. So
only in Alabama. There you go.
Weather gets interesting around here. It does. I mean, I know you're right smack in the middle of Tornado Alley for the whole nation and everything, but right here where I live in Walker County, it's kind of Tornado Alley for our area, so to speak.
Gotcha.
So,
well, we've spent a few days, we've spent a few hours in the cellar the last few years, so hopefully we'll keep those away. But if it brings some rain, I almost think some of them farmers and agriculture folks around here would go, "Hey, bring it on. We're ready for some rain."
I guarantee you. Let's just jump right into it, Trey. Just tell me your story. How did you come to be where you are right now?
Well, a lot of that is a God thing. I married my wife. We were high school sweethearts. We dated for 4 years throughout high school and got married right out of high school. I think God put her in my life because I needed some direction, and he knew what he was doing. In fact, I was kind of wandering aimlessly in this world, a couple of years older than she was, not knowing what I want to do, what direction I want to do. And I think God just knew, Trey, you need somebody in your world to point you where you need to go. And God sent me my wife, Lea, and she, although she was a couple of years younger than me, she's about 4 or 5 years more mature than I am, just because that's generally how it works with men and women. Yes. But we got married right out of high school. A couple of kids who really didn't know what they were doing other than they just knew they wanted to do life together. And we've been married 34 years. We've got 4 kids. We got all 4 boys. We're new empty nesters. That's new to us. And we do a lot of marriage work, and that's where we know one another is we follow each other on Instagram or social media. God kind of opened a door 10, 12 years ago Lee and I were asked to speak it's actually a church retreat for a church that we knew somebody at. They said, come speak to us about marriage. And we thought, we can do that. We like talking about marriage. And after that, we had another church called us and said, can you come do one for us? And then before you knew it, we were doing lots and kind of turned it into a weekend workshop, seminar, boot camp, some people call it. And we now do all 12 to 15 a year all over the U.S. And pretty much the world. We've done several marriage cruises out in the Caribbean. We talk to thousands of couples every year about marriage and written several marriage books, and God just kind of keeps opening the door. And as long as that door's open, we're going to keep running through it. And when he shuts it and goes, all right, we got something else planned for you, we'll go a different direction. But right now, he has really blessed us in the little, if you want to call it, ministry that we have, ministering or coaching couples. We don't do a lot of coaching. We do more speaking and book writing. But we have about 500,000 followers on social media and stuff. And that gives us a good tool to get the message out of what we think is how to do healthy marriages, which a lot of people are looking for answers for. How do you do marriage these days with all the new stuff and new struggles and relationships? How do you have a successful relationship? And so we think it's when you follow some pretty simple guidelines, it's really not that hard to do. And so that's what we do all over the U.S. We go and speak to couples and groups about having healthy marriages and healthy relationships and being good parents and families. And that's kind of who I am and what I do. And I'm a husband and a dad, and I like being both those things.
You said a few minutes ago how whenever you were young, you just kind of felt like you were wandering around aimlessly. How did Lea provide direction?
Well, there was a lot of ways that she provided direction. For one, I needed to continue to be pointed in a positive way that wasn't a selfish way. It wasn't just about me, and she was good at pointing me and keeping me pointed toward God, toward things that we could do to serve other people, and she was really, really good about that. And I just think God had some ways of using her that really blessed me, not just in her maturity and going, in her wisdom, but also in there were times in the past when we were dating, she lined me out, overheard a conversation of some people looking for somebody to work and do a job for them with a church as a youth minister or youth pastor. And she stepped up and said, hey, I know a guy, you ought to talk to my boyfriend. And it was just like she was always there to kind of point me in a really healthy direction of where I needed to go. And I'm thankful for that. I've always said that at a young age, my mom used to always tell me to pray for wisdom. And I think God gave me wisdom by sending me a woman who was very wise.
I heard somewhere before that women can sense and are attracted to what our potential is. They can see something on the inside of us that we're supposed to be that we can't see.
I think you're right about that. And I think a good spouse, not just a good partner, whether it's a husband or a wife, is going to bring out the best in their spouse and encourage them to, I'm going to be your biggest fan and I'm going to root for you and I'm going to pull for you. And if I think this is better for you, I'm going to cheer you on in that direction. And I think you're spot on in that wisdom that you picked up somewhere, because I think you're right about that.
What do you think that relationships and or marriages are built on? What's the cornerstone other than our relationships with the Lord?
Yeah, I think they all built on trust and openness. I think you got to have the cornerstone of trust and openness. We talk in our workshops and in one of our books about being naked with one another, and we're not talking sexual nakedness. We're talking about we don't hide anything from one another. We're
vulnerable.
open. We're very vulnerable. That's Lee's favorite word. We're naked emotionally, intellectually. We don't hide anything. We don't keep secrets. I don't make purchases that she doesn't know about. We don't hide friendships from one another. My cell phone, she's got the passcode to, because I want her to know anytime she wants to pick up my phone and Google something or look at something, she's welcome to. I'm not hiding anything. Everything that's mine is hers, and everything that's hers is mine. And I think that's one of the ways that God designed relationships, is that oneness of realizing that, yes, you are two people, but you're really not. You're really one. Two become one flesh. And when you work off of that philosophy of two people becoming one flesh and everything becomes one, it's our money, not my money and your money. It's our car. It's not my car and his car. It's ours. Then, man, everything, teamwork makes the dream work, I think somebody said one time. And that's, boy, that is a great key to how to do relationships.
Supposed to be two come together as one, and then, if I'm kind of a hopeless romantic, just a little bit. It's supposed to be two come together as one, and then you build your empire. You take on the world.
Absolutely. And I agree. And I'm not only the same hopeless romantic, but I believe the same philosophy. It's me and my wife against the world, and you're not going to divide us. You're not going to split us, and we'll do anything to keep us together, and defend what we've got, to protect it, because that's the way it's supposed to be.
34 years. How have you lasted this long in this day and age? Whenever you've seen the statistics, it's staggering. Just in church populations now, over 50% of the people have been divorced at least once.
Yeah.
How are y'all able to do it?
Well, there's several things I think that are keys that have helped us. One is, there's never been a couple that's got married, that's gone into marriage going, we'll have the option for divorce. But we, like every other couple, said, it's just not going to be an option, that we are not going to get married with the option of divorce out there. We grew up very, very blessed in a couple of families that modeled good marriages. So we both got to see good marriages growing up. But there's two or three things I think that we did really, really well on accident in our 34 years that we now can look back on and go, wow, we really were lucky that we figured that out when we did. Now, we've had lots of peaks and valleys. There's been a lot of struggles. Our marriage is not perfect, and there have been times we've struggled with money issues, and we've struggled with you just go down the list. We're not different from any other couple, but there's been some things that we figured out early on accident that really blessed us. And one of those, at a very, very young age, when we were a couple of 20-year-old kids that had got married and in our 20s and not knowing anything about anything, one of the things we did was we attended every marriage workshop, every marriage class. If a church was hosting a marriage retreat, we went. If a church had a marriage class, we showed up. We were willing to educate ourselves on marriage instead of just going, we'll figure it out when it shows up, And we look back now, and one of the things we did well was I remember going to a church one time they were showing film strips. Now, this was old school. This is 80s, man, back when they had film strips. They had film strips on Wednesday nights. We showed up. Whatever it took. If somebody was doing something on relationships, I wanted to know how to be a better husband. She wanted to know how to be a better wife. That made a huge difference in our relationship. It just like continuing education in just about every job out there in this world. Yet for some reason, married couples get married and they kind of go, we don't need all that stuff. And the best thing you can do is kind of educate yourself on how to do relationships. Another thing that we did well was in that, somebody challenged us one time in a workshop that we need to read a marriage book once a year together, which basically meant I'd read a chapter and leave it on the dresser. She picked it up. She'd read a chapter, and I'd go back and see what she underlined, and she'd go back and look at what I underlined. We'd kind of talk about those things. and they were really helpful for our marriage because they helped me to, I'd ask her, why did you underline that? Why is that so important to you? And she'd explain it, or I would explain to her. She'd go, is that really true about men? And I'd go, yeah, you didn't know this? And so we, for about 34 years, have been reading marriage books together. That has been such a blessing in our world. But, we have just stuck with it, raising kids and now being in this new empty nest thing. It's pretty awesome. We like empty nest. Our last one left to go to college a couple of years ago. And it's honestly, it's kind of like a second honeymoon. We're not complaining one drop.
I don't blame you. I've always been the type in relationships and everything that have always said that it's kind of like a three-legged table. You have to have trust, you have to have communication, and you have to have love. And if you don't have either one of the three, you have nothing. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty spot on. And everything would stem off of those. You think about the times you communicated before you got married, and every couple can go back and think about all those long phone calls and, dates where Lee and I would go out on a date. We'd spend 2 hours talking, sitting in a car or at a park. And then you get married. A lot of couples will get married, and next thing you know, it's like they're saying 12 words a week to one another and very little talk. And it's like, we don't know why we don't feel the spark anymore. And it's like, well, you don't talk to each other anymore. You're not spending time with each other anymore. You're not going on dates anymore. And so, yeah, you're spot on. It's got to be trust. There's got to be communication. All of those three things are going to be things that without the love and without the communication and without the trust, something ain't going to work right in your marriage. And so those are all, and everything will stem off of that, whether it's sexual intimacy, whether it is just recreational support and hanging out and having fun together. All those three things there are going to be your baseline to build off of.
How important do you think it is that couples do a lot of things together? Do you think there needs to be some separation on, like, for example, let's say you would like to go and play golf or whatever with the fellas sometimes. Lee might not want to play golf, but she might want to go hang out with the ladies.
Sure.
Do you think how much of that is a good thing and how much of it is a bad thing?
Well, I think you need a lot of time together, but I also think it's healthy to have some time apart. Start on the time together for just a second. When you get married, you have fallen in love with your best friend, and they're your best friend because you've spent so much time with them. You've dated, you've done trips, you've hung out. You want to do life because it's like, man, we have so much fun when we're doing things together. You can't get married and stop doing things together.
Right.
Friendship, if you needed a fourth leg in there on that table, friendship is one of them, because a lot of couples that come to us that we talk to that go, well, we just don't really feel in love anymore. They hadn't fallen out of love. What they've fallen out of is friendship. They don't do anything together anymore. And couples that don't vacation together, they don't spend time together, the marriages aren't going to work. They're going to struggle in those marriages because you've got to spend time together. You got to keep dating. I think, we personally feel like dating is one of those things you did before marriage, and it needs to continue after marriage. So important that somehow or another, I've always said, I wish you could sign something in the marriage license that says we're going to continue to date, one date at least every 2 weeks, because it's time for you. And especially when you get little ones in the house, that's got to keep coming. That is so important. And it still can be done. As for time alone, that's healthy as well. My wife, she spends time. There's times where she takes off with some of her friends and they go shopping and spend a day somewhere shopping. That's the last thing I want to do. Let them go have fun. And there are plenty of times where I'm going to go out to some place and hang out with the guys and we're going to do something. And so it's healthy to have time apart, but I'll say you need more time together than you need time apart, if that makes sense. Balance that. If I'm getting one day off a week and I'm spending the whole day on the golf course without my spouse, something's wrong on that.
Agreed. We're definitely seeing eye to eye on that one.
You can't say, well, I saw my wife this morning when I left for work. or my husband this morning when I left for work, and I hadn't seen him a whole lot other than at the house for a few minutes with the kids, and I'm going to go play golf for 8 hours. Somewhere you got your priorities mixed up a little bit.
How much does compromise play into the strength and the longevity of relationships?
Well, compromise is a huge key, because when you're on a team, compromise is what's going to make it work, because there's no win or lose. And we talk about this a lot personally, Lee and I do, because a lot of times Lee and I, 34 years of marriage, we still disagree on a lot of things, meaning we don't always see eye to eye, not anything too serious, but there are things that where I'm like, well, I like it this way. And she says, well, I like it this way. And we have to compromise. So we're a team, and it's not about me winning and her losing, or her winning and me losing, because if one of us is losing on the team, we both lost. There's no winners, because what I want, if she wins, I win, and vice versa. It's about, let's figure out a solution, not who wins and who loses. And when we can compromise and figure out, okay, what works best. And sometimes you just have to compromise and give in and realize that, I'm going to trust my spouse on this. I may not think this is the way to go, but they've proven in the past to be faithful in making good decisions. I'm going to see what happens here.
The reason why I brought that up, while I was growing up, I always paid real close attention to how my dad treated my mom and my mom treated my dad. And I also spent a lot of time with my grandparents, because my mom and dad both worked. My grandma and my grandpa were married almost 75 years. They were in between 70 and 75 whenever my grandpa passed. And they used to argue. They used to pick. My grandpa was a needler.
Mm-hmm.
And I have inherited that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just sit and poke and aggravate and everything. And if I see I'm getting under your skin, it's kind of like chumming the water for a shark whenever I'm in the right mood. And I used to sit, that was how he showed affection. It really was. They would argue and everything. Sometimes grandma would win. Sometimes grandpa would win. But the last day that I can remember grandpa ever driving a truck, his pickup truck out here, my grandma was sitting right next to him in the middle of the seat. I've always looked at those things. My mom and dad. A lot of times my mom ran the house.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would pretty much go along to a degree with whatever mama decided. But if he felt strongly enough about it, he stood his ground.
Yeah.
And then there was a good argument / fight. Somebody won, somebody lost. And if a dad ever stood his ground, a lot of times dad won. But there again, in their relationship, no one was walking out front. Nobody was following behind.
True.
They were walking side by side.
True.
And, I've always looked at those two examples that have been huge in my life. And that's what I've always wanted. I've wanted a combination of both.
Yeah, I think they're good. Every relationship's different. It depends on the spouse you marry. It depends on how they were raised. If you're a picker, I know a lot of couples, they love picking on each other. It's how they show each other they love each other.
Yeah.
Marry someone that don't get that, you better not do that, if that makes sense. They're not
makes perfect sense, because I happen to be with somebody that don't like it.
Yes. Yeah, if you marry somebody who goes, I don't like this, then you better cut that out, because it's not the way they feel love or understand love. And there are times that Lee and I pick on each other, but there are also times where we know, hey, this is not the time, to pick. But yeah, I think you're wise on that. Every marriage, and you look at both of your grandparents and your parents, there's times to disagree, but you just never run along and go, well, if I don't get my way, I'm going to walk out, or I'm going to threaten divorce. And those are just not healthy options.
No.
Are there times for walking out? Are there times for divorce in marriages? Absolutely. But if you wear those if you wield those like some gun every time you don't get your way, well, maybe we shot a divorce, man, you're killing your marriage with your threats.
Agreed.
You just can't do stuff like that. That's not wise.
Agreed. I believe love is a choice.
Yep, it is.
Somewhere along the way, you made the choice to love that person.
That's right.
Whether it's just the good old fashioned Christian love, or if it's deep down, hey, I love you and I don't even want to think about doing life without you.
Yep.
Somewhere along that journey, you made the choice.
Yeah. And that choice is not a feeling, because there's going to be days when you don't feel it, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
There are days when I have no doubt that my wife gets up and she don't feel in love with her husband, but she chooses to love him every day. And so there are days, not very often, but there are days when we don't like each other very well. But that doesn't mean we don't love each other, and we would die for one another. But love is a choice, and we make that choice every day, even when we don't feel it, because that's the commitment we've made to one another.
Let's say there's somebody listening to this right now that's struggling in their relationship, whether it would be communication breakdowns. Let's just start with that. Communication breakdowns. What, other than just sitting down in a room, locking yourself in and just hammering everything out, what's a real good way to get back in the flow and get that communication going?
Well, one of the best things you can do is set aside time every day to communicate, to have a time where you just know this is our time to sit down and visit a little bit, whether that's about, hey, how was your day? What do you got on your schedule? That turns into deeper communication. I mentioned earlier that one of the other keys that we look back on and realize that was very, very good for our marriage was early in our marriage. I had a job that allowed me to pick up our boys from school when they were young at about 3:30 every day, dump them at the house just to say hi and check in on them, and then I'd go back to work. Well, I would ask Lee oftentimes, I'd say, will you fix me some coffee so I can take a cup of coffee on the way back to work? She said, sure. Well, it wasn't long after we've been doing this that she said, can you take about 15 to 30 minutes and have a cup of coffee? I'll sit down and drink a cup with you before you go back to work. And I said, absolutely. There's no rule that I have to be back at a certain time. And so probably in about 25 of our 34 years of marriage, if not even more longer than that, we have every day, and still do it today, at about 3:30, somewhere around there, one of us puts on coffee, or we meet for a cup of coffee or something. And we have had for years a time that we've called coffee time. It's just our time. And are there days, a few days, every now and then something will come up and I can't make coffee time, but most of the time every day we're sitting down to visit about what you got on your schedule, what you got going on in life, or here's something that I really want us to talk about, some tough conversation stuff. But we've had that time to have conversation for the past 30 years, and it has blessed us. We look back now and we go, we didn't do that on purpose, but we realize now how important that was to our relationship. And so we always, in our workshops, we tell couples, you need to figure out a time to have coffee time. And it doesn't have to be at 3:30 in the afternoon, and it doesn't even have to include coffee. But you need to find a time before the kids get up, after the kids go to bed, somewhere where during the day that you can have a few minutes, 15 minutes minimum, to just sit down with your spouse without your phone in your hand, without the TV on, to just talk. And it has blessed us amazingly by doing that. And the average these days, we saw a statistic a while back, 4 minutes a day is what the average couple gets to visit. 4 minutes a day, which is not enough. That's one of the reasons the divorce rate's 50%, is because you can't have conversation for 4 minutes a day and expect your marriage to work really well.
Along the same lines, you brought up vulnerability. If a lot of people that are listening to this, or just some, aren't necessarily vulnerable with their spouse or significant other, how can they go about changing that?
It goes back to that openness and honesty. It goes back to that, I want us to be naked together, in a sense of, I don't want to hide things from you. I want to be vulnerable. Men don't like that word. I'm not a big fan of that word. Lea likes that word. And when I say men don't like that word, men, it comes across as vulnerable, as, but it's really very healthy for your relationship. It simply means that I'm going to be open with my spouse. I'm going to tell them what I really think. I'm going to listen to what they think. When they ask me something, I'm not going to go, whatever you want to do is fine, or I'm not going to answer everything with yes or no or whatever, or it was good. I'm going to open myself up to be a part of whatever conversation this is that we're having. And so being vulnerable can be tough.
Yeah. Full-blown honesty. I've actually struggled a little bit with that.
I have to. I think most men do.
Not that I'm trying to hide anything, or it's the fact that sometimes if I'm asked my opinion, I hold back.
Sure.
Because I've always been worried that it would hurt her feelings, or it would upset her in some way. You know what I mean? And we've actually talked about that, and I have been doing a whole lot better at that.
Sure.
But
I get that. I'm the same way.
It's still a struggle. It really is. It's still a struggle.
And it's one of those things. It's not easy to open yourself up to, if I say this, I may get chewed on a little bit, or they may not like it, or I may look dumb if I say it. And so, but vulnerability is important.
That and the fact, I'm 41 years old. I was raised a little old school. We wasn't taught to be like that.
Nope, we were not.
We were taught we're supposed to go to work. We're supposed to put in our hours. We're supposed to provide for our families. And if we've got issues and everything, we keep it inside because we've got to be strong for everybody else. Sweep
it under the rug.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's not a good way to do marriage and family.
Yeah. And in a lot of instances, even, outside of marriage, if I've struggled with this, that, and the other, my way of getting through it is I just drop my head and, figuratively speaking, push through. When it stops hurting, I feel like I'm over it.
Yeah. I get that.
So and I'm being completely open and honest with everybody that's listening to this.
That's right. And so I think you're helping other men out there that are listening, going, yeah, I need to be more vulnerable, or I need to speak up. And I think that's healthy. I think we need to do that. And I think we learn from one another. It helps to know that not everybody else is going through the same thing we are.
Well, the way I see it, if I trust you, my significant other, like I say I do, I should trust her enough to be able to take my opinion 100% and know that I'm not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And get that over with, and, let that be an understanding. Because a lot of people, and you're a coach. I've never been a coach, but I've always had people come to me for advice and this, that, and the other. And it makes me feel real good that people trust me enough or value my opinion enough to want my advice on something, and they respect me enough. So I, in turn, owe them the same amount of respect, and I owe them the same that they're giving me to be able to give it to them 100%.
That makes sense. And that's a good way to put that. Good way to put that.
You and Lea have wrote some books. Let's talk about them.
We've written 3 books. The first one is called 10 Ways to a Stronger Marriage. And it is a marriage book. It is one of those. It's got 10 chapters, discussion questions at the back. If you're a book reader, it's a good book. It's basically our workshop that we do put into print for the most part. Our second book that we did a devotional book because we think that's one of the areas that a lot of couples struggle in is spiritual intimacy. We're good at understanding sexual intimacy and intellectual intimacy where we're having conversation, and recreational intimacy where we're hanging out. But a lot of couples struggle with spiritual intimacy. And so that second book we did, called Wisdom for Your Marriage, is a book based on the book of Proverbs. And basically you read a chapter of Proverbs a day, and then we kind of have a little paragraph that you read that goes with it about marriage. And it gets couples talking about both the Bible and giving them a thought of marriage of the day. And then we've got a new one out that's done extremely well. And this one was written for the busy couple. And what that means is it's quick. Man, it takes about 3 minutes every morning to look at. It's called the Daily Marriage Challenge, and there's 60 of them. And we're on day 17 right now. And you basically sit down and kind of read what our challenge is for the day, to think about what we're supposed to talk about. It's got a little Bible verse in there that fits what it is we're talking about. And then we got a little area for you to write notes in there. And it literally less than 5 minutes a day. And it has provided couples with a lot of great conversation and stuff, dealing with pretty much every topic in marriage. And so all of those three are on our webpage that kind of tell you what's the difference in the three of them. And our webpage is treyandlea.com, TREYANDLEA.com. And you can Google Trey and Lea and it'll pull it up somewhere. But that'll tell you a little bit about those books.
Let's just jump right into what we started with right off the
Okay.
bat. You've got a workshop coming up here very soon in my area. And
that's kind of crazy. And I asked you where you were. You said Alabama. And I said, oh, we're going to Alabama. We're going to Jasper, Alabama. We'll be there in about 3 weeks. And you go, that's 15 minutes from me.
It is 15 minutes from me.
Yeah, I had no clue.
But the reason why I started out with this conversation saying that this had to be a godsend, because we've been trying for the last 2 or 3 months now to try and get a time and everything locked down. And for one reason or another, it just never would work out.
Yeah, hadn't clicked. Tonight it does. And
now all of a sudden you're coming to town. And I definitely feel like it's a godsend, and I plan on being there.
I think that's awesome.
So if you would tell the folks that are listening here locally that might be very intrigued on what you're talking about.
You got it. I'll give you the details. We're going to be in Jasper on February 3rd and 4th. That's a Friday night, Saturday morning. It starts at 7 p.m. on Friday night, goes till 9, starts back on Saturday morning at 9 and ends at 12. We're going to be at the Woodland Trace Church of Christ. I think they call it the Trace Church is what it's called. And the workshop is free this time. The church has said we're going to cover anybody's expenses that comes. There will be no charge. They're actually providing daycare. This is an awesome church. They obviously care about marriages. They are providing everybody's workbook. Generally, there's a $3 charge for a really nice workbook that comes with the workshop, and they're covering all of that. And so all you have to do is get on our webpage and register so we know you're coming, that we can bring enough stuff so you can get your book and everything else. But the Woodland Trace Church of Christ, and going to be there that Friday night and Saturday, the 3rd and 4th. And if you're listening and you live in an area, and I'll tell them what I told you a while ago, this is not stressful. My wife and I speak. It's fun. You'll laugh. We use a lot of humor, a lot of basic stuff about marriage. When you leave, we promise you'll go, I am so glad we came. It was good for us to remember why it was we got married. It's just a good old shot in the arm, if we can put it that way, of just building you up, encouraging you, telling you why marriage matters and why families matter. And for you men who are listening, who are going, we ain't got marriage. Why would I want to go to that? The men love our workshop. We have more men that reach out to us going, that was fantastic. And the men who will show up, I promise you, you will leave telling your wife, see, I told you it was fun and we needed to go. It'll be a lot of fun, and we would love for you to we do need you to register just so we can bring enough stuff for you. But Woodlands Trace Church, there in Jasper, Alabama. We have couples coming from Tennessee, from Georgia. We have some couples coming from Mississippi. We look today, we have couples coming in from all over that area within about a 500-mile radius. We have lots of couples that fly in and drive in for our workshop. So if you're going, well, they're an hour away, we'll wait till they get closer. We probably ain't going to ever get any closer. So grab the car and get here.
I plan on being there, and I am definitely going to be able to walk up and say, hey, I'll be the big ugly one walking up saying hello.
I'd like that. That'd be awesome. We'll give us a chance to meet in person. And can I say this? And I always think this is important. You're going to look at your schedule and you're going to go, oh, we have such and such that weekend, or I may be on call that weekend, or I may have to work for a couple hours on Saturday morning, or one of my kids has soccer that day. Can I just say, there is absolutely nothing in this world more important than your marriage. And if you want to bless your kids, your work, your relationships, and your life, you will put first things first, and you will take off work. You will tell your kid, hey, buddy, you got 16 games this year. I'll be at 15, but I'm going to miss this one this week. It will be worth it for you to come. Don't you come up with an excuse not to be there, because you're going to try and there's going to be plenty of excuses. But if you come, you'll be glad you did.
I'm going to say one thing. You were talking about the men saying that, oh, we ain't got no relationship problems. Are you sure? Are you sure you don't have relationship problems? Because there's a lot of women out there that's going to keep their mouth shut and just let things go and just let things build. You're going to be blind because you're not paying attention, because you're in your comfort zone. And then all of a sudden, whenever everything explodes, you're going to wonder what happened. And then whenever you finally figure out what happened, you're going to kick yourself in the butt and say, why didn't I see that? This would be one of those situations to where if you go to this workshop and maybe, just maybe, something will be said that you're supposed to hear, and you'll be able to head off some of that. You'll be able to fix a problem that may be lurking that you don't have a clue about because you're blind to it.
Yeah. And husbands are that way. I'm a man. I can pick on us for just a minute. We're that way. And this may shock you. 70% of the people who file for divorces are wives. And people are always going, well, them wives, they're the meanest, them wives, they just always willing to give up. What we have found is that 9 times out of 10, the wife has asked for years and years, let's take our marriage serious. Let's go on dates. Let's go to a marriage retreat. Let's read a marriage book. And the husband for years has kind of drug his feet going, there's not anything wrong with our relationship. There's not anything. And finally, over years, she gets to the point where she goes, okay, I'm done. I've tried. I've asked. There's nothing else I can do. And that is when a man stands up a lot of times and goes, okay, I'm ready to go to work. And it's like, buddy, you should have been doing this for 2 years. Don't wait until the boat gets to the waterfall to decide you're going to paddle. Start paddling the boat upstream before you get to the waterfall. So don't be that guy. And don't be that person that comes along and gets blindsided because they know that there's been a few things that they needed to work on in their marriage and they just sweep it under a rug. We want to be men and people who encourage men to step up, be that husband, be that father. Man, that makes all the difference in the world. When you and I die someday, they're not going to care about how much money we had in the bank or what kind of car we drove or anything else. They're going to talk about, did we love God and what kind of relationships did we have? And that's all that really matters in this world in the end.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Especially I want to talk to those men that may or may not have children right now. Either they're your children, you chose to take them in because you married a woman that already had a child, or you're currently dating somebody that currently has a child. Guess what? You're in a father role because you chose it. Somebody's watching you. So do everything that you can to make sure that your relationship is a bright example for that one that's watching you. to learn from.
Yep, that's true. Spot on. Spot on. So many free resources out there. I'll throw this out there. We're on a podcast right now. There are incredible amounts of free podcasts on marriage. If you're having some marriage issues, if you're not having marriage issues, man, I'm a guy that I'm a well-checked guy. What that means is for the past probably 15 years, every May, I go for a well check. I'm not sick, but I go in and I get some blood work done. They kind of check everything out. They go, hey, you need to watch this. You need to do this. I try to catch it before it gets me in trouble. Twice, get this, twice in my life doing well checks, they have found cancer early and got it caught and got it taken care of. Had I sat on that and not gone for well checks, I'd have been in trouble. Now, here's my theme that I want you to catch. You need to be going on well checks with your marriage. You may be going, hey, my marriage is good. Go for a well check. Check in to make sure everything's good. Everything's rolling the right way. You want to catch things before they creep in and it becomes a cancer in your marriage. So continue to do those well checks. Listen to that marriage podcast. Read a marriage book. Go to a marriage retreat. You do something to build up your marriage because those things are healthy things.
Couldn't agree more. Let's say there's people that are listening to this and be like, well, I can't get to Alabama. Where can they find your schedule for any more workshops that you have coming up in the future? Where can they find your books, and where can they find all the great things that you're doing on Instagram and any other social media?
You can find everything at our webpage. Landing page is treyandlea.com, treyandlea.com. And you can find where we're going to be in 2003. We're already booked up for 2004. You can see our dates of where we're going to be in the U.S. all over the place. Did I say that right? 2024. Yeah, we're actually booked up in 2024. So you can look and go, hey, we're over here in Tennessee, and they're going to be in Tennessee this year, or we're going to be in Oklahoma, or we're going to be wherever it is. We're going to be all over. So come hang out with us. In July, one of the funnest events we do is we have a getaway weekend in Dallas, and we reserve a hotel close to the airport and a big convention room, and we do kind of a marriage weekend there at that hotel. And we have couples come in from all over the U.S., fly in and have a getaway weekend. Me and my spouse are going to come in. We've got the kids here, and we're just going to kind of come hang out. And so surely you can look on that list of upcoming dates that we have on our webpage and find something you're halfway close to. If not, man, look at our podcast and you will find just about every topic on marriage that you go, well, I wish I had more information on this. There'll be it in there somewhere in one of our podcasts. But lots of information, treyandlea, LEA.com.
Trey, it's been an absolute honor to get to talk to you. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in the 2 or 3 weeks.
I look forward to it too. I'm going to send you a link where you can get registered. All right.
Please do. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on my show. Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, sir.
Big thanks to Trey Morgan of Stronger Marriages with Trey and Lea for coming on to the show. If you would, check them out, any and all things, their podcast, their social media and everything at treyandlea.com. If you are new to the show and like what you hear, hit that like, subscribe, or follow button and download the episodes in the archives. If this show has been a positive addition to your life, please rate the show and leave a review. Won't take you but a minute, and it really would help the show. Find us on social media by typing Porch Matters Podcast into the search bar. Word of mouth is still the best way of sharing. Pick your favorite episode and share it with at least one person this week. There are a lot of people out there that have never heard of a podcast before. I sure would appreciate it. And I'll see you next time right here on Porch Matters.